Thanks for joining me. This is Danny, and welcome back to my Real Tech series. Today we are going to be playing with PneumaticCraft logistics. So we're going to be setting up a couple of logistics networks. Now, logistics networks are basically networks that allow us to manage inventory and items. And it's a pretty powerful system. The logistics networks consist of multiple different logistics frames, which allow us to designate inventories as being either providers or storage or requesters. First of all, we're going to set up an inventory system in our base here that will allow us to have a drop chest that we drop all of our stuff in, and then that stuff will be put into its proper place. And then we're also going to have kind of a request system set up too, where right here we have this gold chest, which is kind of my crafting chest because it's attached to this crafting station. And it's where I put items that I use in crafting recipes. So we're going to set this chest up to always kind of maintain a particular inventory of certain items. In order to do this particular project that we're doing right now in the base, this is our first project, we're going to need everything that you see in this bottom row. So we're going to need a flux compressor in order to get some pressure in this area. Now, of course, we could tap into our existing network that we have over in that building by running some pipes over here, but that would not be very efficient because it's a long way from the source. So I'm just going to have a separate pressure network here. In order to maintain that pressure, we're also going to need a pressure gauge module and an advanced PCB. And of course, this guy's going to require some RF. So we're going to do a little bit of RF setup there too, which I'll probably do off camera. We're also going to need some pressure tubes, and then we're going to need these logistics modules. Now, there are actually two different ways that we can set up these logistics networks, and we're going to do both. One of them is to use pressure tubes and logistics modules to connect the network so that items basically end up being transferred through the tubes. So the tubes basically kind of act like item pipes. The other way to set up the network is using drones, in which case your inventories don't need to be connected at all. So we wouldn't have to use any pipes or tubes or logistic modules. We would have drones flying around, moving the items in between the inventories. We're going to be doing that next. That'll be our next project. And that's actually going to be pretty fun. In this particular project, it's not going to be very practical to have drones, but in any case, it gives us a chance to take a look at both types of logistics networks. We're going to need a logistics configurator. This is going to basically allow us to, configure our logistics network because we're going to be placing these frames now. So we have these multiple different frames, and they all have different functions. In this network, we're going to have an active provider frame, which is going to essentially be the drop chest that pushes items to all the other frames, including the storage frames. We're going to have two different types of storage frames, and we'll see how those work. And then we're going to have a requester frame, which will be able to pull from the network. So the first thing I want to do is set up the frames so that we can see how this is all going to work. Now, I'm actually going to place an inventory here in the floor. This is going to be our drop chest. So what we're going to do is we're going to set an active provider frame on that chest. So you can see the frame frames the inventory. It basically becomes a part of that inventory block. And now if we right-click on this, we just open the actual chest, right? Now, if we have a logistics configurator in our hands and we right-click on this, then we get the GUI for the logistics frame. So this allows us to filter items that we want to provide. We can also use this logistics network for fluids. So we could put these frames on tanks and other such things that hold fluids. We can also hide these things if we want to. So we could make this invisible, and then you'll see that the frame will kind of fade away, unless we're holding a frame in our hand or the logistics configurator. So that way we won't have these frames all over the place if we don't want to look at them. So this is going to be our crafting chest, as I had mentioned earlier. This is going to be a requester. So we're going to put a requester frame on here. This will allow us to request items from other inventories in the network. And then we're going to actually head down into the basement to set up our storage frames. Storage frames designate inventories that store items pushed from the active provider frames. Now, the passive provider frames don't push to storage frames, but the active providers do. And of course, the requesters can pull from the storage frames. So we have a storage drawer network up here, and there's the drawer controller. So if we set a storage frame on that storage controller, or that drawer controller. Essentially, our network will now have access to everything in our storage drawer network. Of course, we can put these on chests. We can put them on anything. This is our MagneticCraft shelving unit, which has all these different inventories that are all searchable from one place. So we can search for whatever and we'll find our stuff there. If we just put a frame on any one of these, it'll basically have access to this entire storage unit. We're going to put a default storage frame here. So a default storage frame is just like a storage frame, except that it is lower in priority. So that means that when we put stuff into the network through our provider frame here, it's first going to look for storage frames in order to place those items. Now, since we have a storage drawer network up there, it'll only be able to put things in that network that already exist in the storage drawers because all those drawers are locked. Whatever it can't put in the storage drawers, it's going to end up just dumping in here, where we'll have a nice searchable inventory. These items did end up being somewhat expensive. There's a fair amount of plastic that we need for these because every one of these requires 8 plastic of some color, and each plastic is a bucket of liquid plastic. So if you remember from the previous episodes where we learned how to make plastic, that's a lot of plastic that we have to make. It's a lot of oil that we end up having to use. However, each one gets us 4. So in this particular project ends up being kind of expensive because we have to make 4 of each frame, but this does scale well. So when we get into larger projects, we'll be able to use these frames, of course, for those. So now we're going to take our pressure tubes and we're going to connect all this stuff together. And we're going to have to get up into some strange angles here too. So basically, now of course the pressure tubes don't connect to those automatically because what we need to do is, well, first of all, move this light. Oh, and we have that chest up there. And I need more tubes, don't I? I need one more. Oh, crap. So then what we do is we take these logistics modules and we place these between the pipe and the frame, basically. So put that one there, and it depends where you click. So they're not as hard to place as they might otherwise be, but some of these are a little hard to get to. So this guy, I guess I'll break this block right there. These do tend to add up after a while too. We need 4 plastic for these. We end up needing 8. Well, we end up needing a bunch of compressed iron because we need these pressure tubes, and then we need gold for the, whoops. I needed to make 8 of these pressure gauges in order to make 4 of these logistics modules. Okay, so I'm just going to break this block to get at that. And of course, the frame will drop also. And then I can put that back there. Put that there. And then our storage frame, you can see we have 4 of them now. It dropped it. We can also use this to drop the frames. If we shift right click, it'll drop the frames. Also, if you have a frame in your hand, any frame, it'll drop them as well. So we could do that, or we can right click on it while we have a frame in our hands and it'll drop the frame. Right now, this network is already set up. However, we are going to need to get pressure in this network. I could have saved tubes. I would have had to made one if I would have just done this, because this will terminate it. It'll terminate that tube, so we don't have an open network. So now I guess what I'll do is I'll stick this guy so that it's facing away from that, so that it connects. And then what we're going to have to do is redstone control this guy. So I'm going to stick this pressure gauge down here. And then, so if you remember from last time, this guy is going to output a redstone signal based on how much pressure is in the network. It's it's 1 redstone per half a bar. So 1 bar gives us 2 redstone, up to 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to give this thing an advanced PCB, which will open up this GUI for us so that we can specify exactly when we want it to output a redstone signal. So in this case, we want to output a redstone signal when we have less than, let's say, 4.8 bar. because this network can't go above 5 bar. However, this flux compressor is capable of producing way more than that. So this guy's going to output a redstone signal when we have 5 bar. I'm going to use some redstone paste to run this redstone signal over here. So right now it is outputting a redstone signal because we have less than 5 bar. We have exactly 0 bar. And now we got to get some power into this guy and we will be all set. So this will just keep our power at, let's see, we need a low voltage wire connector and an insulated low voltage wire. And I'm not going to put any speed upgrades in this guy, so we're not going to have to worry about heat because it doesn't produce, it won't even be running all the time, and the amount of heat that it'll produce will not go above this. Okay, so we now have power coming in and we are producing a little bit of pressure, so our pressure is going up. Oh, I almost forgot. We need to set, this thing was on always. We want to set this to high signal, otherwise it would continue running until the pressure got too high and it would end up blowing up our pipes. Okay, so I changed my mind. I'm gonna throw a few speed upgrades in there just to get it up to a reasonable pressure. Okay, just to make sure that everything's working, that it does indeed shut off when it's supposed to. So it's at 4.7. I think I had it set to shut off at 4.8. So there we go. So it shut off. I'm going to take those speed upgrades out of there. We don't need them necessarily. This thing won't be using all that much pressure because this is all we're doing with this network. Although eventually we're going to be hooking this pressure into a drone that we're going to have over in our warehouse, but that... it should be able to keep up with that too. I'm just going to randomly grab some things. We'll grab some stuff that goes in the storage drawers. I'm going to grab, I don't know, we'll grab some of these shaded gardens. If I throw these in there, we should see what's going on. Oh, okay, that they did get pulled out. And our iron ended up back in here. We now have 254 iron. And if we look down here, we should see that our shaded garden ended up back in here. Hooray! So it's behaving exactly how we want it to. Nice. So now we have a drop chest where we can throw all our stuff. So let's say we want to keep a half a stack of iron in here at all times. So we right click on this with our configurator and we do that. And now if we look in here, we should see that we have a half a stack of iron. If we take it out, we will soon get another half a stack of iron. Hooray! So we can, whatever we decide we want to keep in here. So now when we're in this chest and we're crafting things that require iron, it'll pull iron from that chest and then it'll replenish it again. So that's how these work. And we can, of course, put whatever we want in there. And what's nice is we don't even have to have the item. So we could right click on that and we get a search box. So we could say, hey, we also want to keep some oak wood in there. And we can, whoops, do that. And then it'll have oak wood. Right now it's just going to keep 1. If we right click, it'll increment the number. If we left click, it'll decrement. If we shift right click, it'll double it. And if we shift left click, it will halve it. And over here, it'll tell you exactly how that all works. The logistic modules require at least 3 bar of pressure, and they will consume a certain amount of pressure for every operation that they perform. The amount that they consume will be determined by how many items are moved and how far they're being moved. And you can see the exact calculations for this inside the manual. And these colors on the back will tell you the state of the logistics module. So if we shift right click with our book, we can see that red tells us we don't have enough pressure, so there's not at least 3 bar. Orange means there's at least 3 bar, but there's not enough pressure to do whatever operation it is currently trying to do. If it's green, that means there's enough pressure. It's on standby. So that's what this is at now. It will then pulse blue when it is actually doing some operation. And that's it. It was pretty easy, right? Although, like I said, there was a considerable amount of work that went into this. See, now I can just dump stuff in there and it will take care of it for me and put it in the right place. Nice. It was a considerable amount of work, mostly getting the stuff. And of course, you know, the last 3 episodes of basically progression that we had to go through in order to get the infrastructure that we needed in order to craft the items that we needed for the logistics network. But once you have all that stuff, it's actually fairly easy and simple. So this is the warehouse for mine colonies. We have lots and lots of these racks, which are inventories. And sometimes it's really hard to find stuff because it's difficult to predict. And we have another floor up here. It's difficult to predict where the delivery person is going to put items. And I've kind of figured out a couple of patterns. She does tend to put items where there are already items of the same type. And if she has something new, she tends to put it in this one. So what I've done here is I set up logistics storage frames, just the regular storage frames, on just about every single inventory. Except for this one, where I have a providing storage frame. So that means anything that gets put in here is going to get carried somewhere else. So this particular inventory is going to stay empty all the time. And then here, I have a chest that I'm going to use as kind of a request chest. So I'm going to put a requester frame on that chest. And then whenever I want an item, all I have to do is hit it with my logistics configurator and then tell it what I want. So let's say I'm trying to find some ladders or something like that. So I'll do that, and then that'll be here, and I'll say, however many I want. And then we will end up with ladders in that chest if they exist somewhere, anywhere within this warehouse. Now, it's not going to be very practical to run tubes to every single one of these chests, and then of course it'll be rather expensive to make a logistics module on every single one of these. So that's where our drones come in. So the logistics drone is the first drone that we're going to be playing with in the series. There's a few different types of drones. There are harvesting drones, there's logistic drones, and there's programmable drones. The logistics drone does one thing. It moves items around within a logistics network. So it basically does the same thing that the tubes and panels are doing for us in our base, except here it's going to be doing this stuff here. So I've already got this guy charged up with 10 bar. I have a charging station here, and he's going to get started right away, emptying this chest out and putting it in some other chest. So we don't know exactly where he's going to put the stuff, but it doesn't really matter because whenever we want something, we can get it from here. And we already have a ladder, so there must have been one ladder in this system, or within these chests somewhere. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to go through here with the ladder in the way, but just to make things easier, I'm going to cut out kind of a opening up here and surround it with railings, just so that he can get up and down easily. That's it. However, I mean, there was a little bit of work that went into this. Obviously, I had to make all these frames, and it turned out to be 48, I think. So I had to make like 96 of the yellow plastic in order to get all these frames. So it did end up being a little bit expensive. I ran tubes from the base, so the pressure network that we have set up in our base is now coming out here. It is a low pressure network, so it's not going to be able to load this guy up all the way with 10 bar, but that's fine. It'll get him up to 5 bar. And then, but what we have to do with this charging station is we have to add the dispenser upgrade. So what that does is it adds this little thing on it, which basically does two things. It allows us to go up here and load up our stuff. Of course, we're losing pressure because that network has less pressure than we have, so we just actually put pressure into that network. But it'll also allow the drone. So when the drone is almost out of pressure, he's automatically going to go over here to this charging station and charge himself up. And that's it. Like, that's the whole thing. Although I say that's it, but I did actually put in a reasonable amount of time crafting all these frames and getting the plastic that I needed for them, and then setting them all up. But now that it's all set up, basically it's a hands-off system. So now what we can also do, because we can mostly expect that the delivery person is going to put everything in this rack that has the provider frame on it, we can then go and say, hey, you know what? We want all of our wood to end up in this guy. So we can take our logistics configurator and we can search for, let's say, oak wood, and it'll always put oak wood in here. And we can say that we want it to ignore metadata, which will then have it give us all the woods, or all the vanilla woods, although there's actually two different types of woods. Oops, I did not want to do that. Oh, and by the way, you can also configure these logistics frames when they're in your hand. So we can go like this and configure it. And then whatever inventory we put it on, it will maintain that configuration. The logistic drones have a 33 by 33 by 33 area that they work in that's centered on the point that you place them. So wherever we place them, it's going to be able to work within 16 blocks in every direction. So it has a 16 block radius. There are also multiple upgrades that we can give the drone, which we can take a look at over here. I'm going to take it to this one because it has more pressure than the one over there. We can give it a security upgrade, which allows it to go underwater without dying. Volume upgrade will, of course, give it more air so that it'll last longer. It'll increase the air volume. Speed upgrade will obviously make it go faster. We can give up to 10, giving it a 200% speed increase, so they can actually go pretty fast if you really speed them up. And also, as I had mentioned before, they can take damage. And if you give them an item life upgrade, it will allow them to repair themselves. And then finally, there's also a magnet upgrade. And the magnet upgrade will allow it to pick up items nearby, which could be really nice for things like harvesting and that sort of thing. However, I have found, now if we place it right here, wherever we place it down, that's going to be the center of its area. I have found that they won't go out of their way to pick up items. So if an item drops like within its range, it will pick it up. And depending on how many upgrades you give it, it'll increase its range. I think up to 5 block radius. Just to make sure this is working the way as expected, I requested some spruce planks down there. So I'm just going to stick them up here. Yep, look at that. Nice. Hooray. Nice. Yeah, this is going to be a very nice system. I can't tell you how much time I've spent going like this and just checking all these chests to see where stuff is. But now we won't have to do that anymore. And I'm going to designate a few of these too. However, so if we say, for instance, that we want oak wood to be here all the time, it's not going to pull oak wood from other storage frames. It'll only pull oak wood from a request or from a provider frame. So we'll kind of have to first organize this thing if we want it to be organized, but honestly, it doesn't really matter to me at this point if it's organized because we can request everything here. So that takes care of logistics networks. We're going to play definitely more with logistics networks as we're going along because these are going to be very nice for automation. As you can imagine, we would be able to use this to improve probably our tree farm and maybe even this setup that we have here with our Cobbleworks. Anything where we were using hopper ducks and other methods of moving items, we could use these guys for moving items for us. So in the next episode, we did logistics drones too. So in the next episode, we'll take a look at the harvesting drones and a bunch of other miscellaneous tips and tricks and some more fun and powerful items and blocks. And then we're going to dedicate an entire episode to pneumatic armor because it is insane and amazing. And we can do a lot of crazy stuff with it. So I hope you join me for that. If you do have any questions or comments or whatever about logistics networks, please feel free to, or anything else for that matter, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And of course, if you did enjoy this, don't forget to click the like button and to join me next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.